you already heard these guys converse a bit, so you guys know how fluid that is, but this is a chance for Norman to really pick Steve's brain on things that he hasn't yet, or on things that over this weekend he's like, Steve, okay, so what do you really think about this, or where do you want to go with that, and vice versa. But I want to emphasize that this is a conversation into which we're being invited as listeners. We're going to have a coffee break, and then will be our time to hit them with questions. But right now, this is their time for questions for each other. And then I get to be a bit greedy because this is my house, and I get to start them off with a few questions. But then I'm going to kick them off with questions.
Oh, maybe.
Then I will step back. Unless I think they're being particularly obtuse, then I'll ask them unpack.
No.
But so this is our chance to sit in and listen.
And what time do we have till for this session?
Team, I misplaced my schedule.
Yeah, let me check.
7?
Jeremy.
7 or 8,
Yeah.
Is this tomorrow at 2?
My flight's tomorrow at 4. You got to go at 6.
This says about 2. Yeah, 2.
About 2?
2 p.m.
Okay, cool.
Okay, good.
Okay, yeah. So we got time to play with, and if we feel like
If we get boring,
have
we can
nothing
stop
else
early.
to say, time for a coffee break, just
Okay.
let us know. Okay, so I mean, it's really hard for you guys. Steve, if you had to choose one of your songs or albums to best explain you to someone who didn't know you, which one would it be?
Oh, wow.
You can start prepping because you're guessing wherever, you can guess.
I haven't written any songs.
Boy,
that's hard, because an album comes at a particular time in your life, and it's an album, like a photo album. It's not who you are, it's who you were.
It's not your time.
Right, and so an album is like people keep on asking me, do you still call it an album? Yes. Like a photo album, it's who you were, it's a collection of snapshots, right? I would say, I don't know if there's anything that would say who I am.
So if you wanted,
Could I change the question a little bit?
yeah, absolutely.
The question that still mystifies me, that I'm in awe of, is a song I wrote called "Burning Ember."
Okay.
Years
That's
ago.
why.
It was there's a guy named Father John of Kronstadt, Eastern Orthodox priest, late 1800s, and I discovered a book of his called "My Life in Christ," and it's just a series of, it's a dense, thick book, but it's just a series of daily reflections, just his journaling, spiritual journaling. And next to the scriptures, I would say is the book I own that has the most lights in it. There's like where you just kind of like, like just, and they're all just short little entries, 2-3 paragraphs. And it's hard to get into, not because he's that deep, it's just the language is so different.
Okay, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
the language almost feels hostile and aggressive sometimes. It's not. It was just a harsher time. And he was a priest in Kronstadt, and Kronstadt was a penal town. So before there were formal prisons, countries, especially Russia and stuff, they just have a whole town. So if you committed a crime, you're going to Kronstadt. And you just kind of duke it out with all the other bad actors and serve your time there. And so it was a safe place, to some degree, so that your enemies couldn't get you.
Right.
But it was also a place of all the ne'er-do-wells.
Yeah.
And I don't know who he pissed off, but he ended up being assigned the priest, the Orthodox priest for Kronstadt, which I'm sure is not a great gig. But he had such a profound respect for the mystery and the beauty of the human person. And he was the one that would find, people fighting or, drunk in the ditch, and he'd pick them up and he'd dust them off and he'd say, "This is beneath your dignity." And that was his, where I was taught to say, yeah, that's exactly who you are. You're just proving. I say, no, this is beneath your dignity. Good first. Good first. And he wrote this line, basically, he says, and he said, if you take a piece of iron and you put it into fire, it is the nature of iron, just a rod of iron, to take on the qualities of the fire. And he says that's natural to iron. The heat isn't. the ability to take on the heat. And so if you leave it there, iron starts to warm. It takes on the quality of fire. And then it starts to actually take on light. So it'll start to glow. And it'll go from red to white hot if you leave it long enough. And then it belongs to the nature of iron that it can retain those qualities even if you have to take it out.
Huh.
So you can take iron out of the fire.
Yeah.
You can hold it out like a beacon. You could probably start a fire. You can warm with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll turn back to cold metal again. And then you need to put it back in. So then he says, oh man, oh woman, lay your life in the fire of God's divine love in order to become by grace what God is by nature. Anything less is beneath your dignity. That we've been created, it's part of our creational makeup to take on the qualities of God. And that anything less is beneath our dignity. And that staggered me. And then the song came out that kind of riffed off that. And it pulled a lot of Orthodox themes. I could go through it. But the stunning thing for me was when I finished the song, it was the first time I realized that the song knew more than I did. And I'd never encountered that before, that this felt like an other. It didn't feel like an expression of Steve Bell. It felt like I tapped into something I had no business knowing. And I would say I've got a few mentors in my life, and that song is one of them.
Interesting.
Right.
That's
So I keep going back to that song. And when I'm disoriented in myself, I go back to remind myself who I am. And also like allow myself to sit before this mystery that is obviously, like, I think other people have appreciated the song, but I have needed that song my whole life. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Can you play it?
I can play it, yeah.
Thank you, Norman.
There you go.
The thing is about the whole fire image, but he also says, don't kick yourself, the fire might burn. Like there may be, it will burn off impurities, so it's not just, lay yourself in the fire of God's divine love and everything will be happy. There may be a struggle in that. Yeah. So.
Steve's yet to dive into George MacDonald, but that's a great, like Isaiah 6, Princess and Curdy. Princess and Curdy's hands in the fire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Quickly here. And can I just unpack the last? The last verse is kind of pulling the metaphor of in Orthodox worship. There's a censer. You see this in movies. The Eastern Catholics. They swing it around to smoke, and the priest is going halapji. Like just sort of saying Greek things, and smoke is coming out, and the censer. It's really interesting. The censer in the Orthodox way of thinking is the human. Right? It may be ornate, but it's kind of just cold metal, but you put the fire of God's divine love in it, and what comes out is this sweet. So it's part of that same sort of image, Okay. I'll put this here. Judge for yourself how great is the one who lives in God, whose God is love, like an iron when left in embers bright. Everything is fire, everything is light. Oh, love, most beautiful you are. Oh, flame of joy within my heart. Burning ember, I remember love's first light in me. I was cold then, like a stone when I saw your flickering. Oh, what beauty when you drew near me. I could scarcely speak. Somehow I knew I would be new in your glowing. Judge for yourself if a fire isn't safe. When cities fall, its face. And yet a flower can endure the course of a storm by bowing to the tempest's rage. Oh, love more fierce than all the rest. Oh, raging joy within my breast. Burning ember, I remember love's first light in me. I was cold then, like a stone when I saw your flickering. Burn forever and let me never curse the pain you bring. Somehow I know I will be whole in your burning. La di di da 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 da. La da 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 da. La da da da. La di di da 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 da. La da 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 da. La da da da. Oh, love more lovely than the rest. Oh, flame of joy within my breast. Burning ember, shine forever in the darkest tomb. Warmth of heaven, hidden secret in a mother's womb. Flame of beauty blazing through me, so that all can see. 'Cause somehow we know we'll all be whole in your burning. In your burning. In your burning. So really quick, I just forgot. When I talk about the censer being a representative of the human person, there's actually 3 images with the censer. It's the tomb. The tomb, which is not a good story unless that burning light isn't there, right? Or the womb, right? Or the human person. So yeah, that's all in that censer image.
And the perfume that he makes.
And what comes from that, yeah. So the darkest tomb in my mother's womb, blazing through me. Somehow we all know we'll be whole in this. Yeah.
That's beautiful, Steve. Thank you. I mean, we probably won't be able to teach us your course or give us your whole book or article. But is there one of those things that you would feel like most either captures who you are or a moment in your being you?
Yeah, it's a really hard one.
Mm-hmm. That's why I throw in course there too.
Yeah.
Or you can vary it out.
I think the book I've just finished is the
Yeah,
one that
I wondered
is
if that
my
might be.
most me.
Yeah.
Because
It's really beautiful, guys.
it was,
Yeah, it is a beautiful book.
I felt free to write a book just the way I wanted. Not writing for promotion or tenure or anything. And it was also a book written with real personal urgency for me. So I feel so much is invested in that book. And the trick was to keep it light enough that the weight of that investment doesn't overwhelm the book.
You did. You did.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. You never know how a book gets received. But I think, so I'm really excited about that book. But the book upon which I think I have been moving toward and upon which everything else is going to rest from henceforth is This Sacred Life. just because it's an audacious book in which I try to get the really big questions on the table and try to give them my inflection on why questions of where, who, and how, what to do now, how those questions can be illuminated when put in relationship with each other, but then also done in a sort of theological way, but not, I hope, not too heavy-handed a theological way. So I think that's the foundational book, but the most me book is this whole book.
Thank you. Maybe I'm gonna zoom forward a little bit. Ooh, that's gonna hurt. Sorry, you guys can't see what's on my page. I'm like, it's a little hard after. But, okay, knowing what Norman has written, and including the book that you've had a chance to see, is there something else that you would love to see Norman write? Like, what other book would you love to see him bring his Normanness into and address?
No manness.
His
No man.
Normanness.
Do you know what I've actually, what I was going to ask you anyway, so this would be it then, is that how do you, and I think I'd like to ask you a bit about agrarian spirit, because you talk about 5 different sort of practices, and, when you, like Greta Thunberg, she says, I don't want you to feel bad, I want you to panic.
Yeah.
And I know you know more than I do what's coming. I had a conversation with Frank yesterday about if a couple little things tip, how fast life will end as we know it. And I guess I'm curious, as someone that feels things, how I'd like to have a book on helping. Like, what do I got to do to keep the temperature down so I can be of use? Do you know what I mean? Like, because in me, I feel this panic, and at a certain point, that's not going to be helpful. So I would love a little book on practices for keeping the temperature down, so that when the shit hits the fan, which I think it's gonna, I don't have hope that that's not gonna happen.
Right.
That's not where my hope lies.
Right.
How do you do this? How do we do this so that we can be helpful rather than panicking, reactionary?
Yeah.
So it's more of almost like a pastoral thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think about how to position the work that I do, the work I want to still do. And, I've said this is the first time in my career I don't have a book project in line right now. I'm not writing a book right now. And I'm wanting to take some time just to figure out how to do that. Right. I've done enough writing that gives us the bad news, and I'm done with bad news. You don't need to tell people the bad news. You just have to say climate change, and you've got them. 2 words, that's it, and then you can do the rest. And I'm really interested in sort of constructive work now. What does that look like to reach people at an affective level, not simply a cognitive one? And so that's going to be me, I think, playing with different styles of writing. I've thought about doing creative nonfiction. I've thought about doing sort of more historical type work to open up historical stuff. Like a book I greatly admire is by Jonathan Lear, a book called Radical Hope, where he engages with the demise of a whole indigenous tribe because of the erasure of the practice of warfare and bison. And he riffs on this very specific historical moment to open up all sorts of really profound cultural questions. And it's just, in my view, a beautiful book. And I thought, might that be something that I try to do too? So I don't know yet what that style is going to be, but what I write henceforth is not for fellow academicians.
Well, here's one more then I'd like to hear from you. Would be, I can't call myself an evangelical anymore, but there's still enough evangelical in me that I want to know, what is the place of the resurrection in all this? Like, where does a resurrection fit? Is that still something that matters at this moment? Does it matter at this moment?
I think so. I think it's absolutely crucial at this moment. Okay. because it's the only way to speak into the possibility that it is all just death bound.
Right.
Otherwise, if the resurrection is not true, we are so screwed.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I really believe that it's come down to that. So for sure, resurrection is key. And there too, the question is, how do you speak that in a way that, doesn't require the person you're speaking to sort of buy into some of the narratives that they otherwise find hugely objectionable.
Yeah.
So I'm trying, and this, I don't know if this is a good strategy or not, I'm trying to use the word God less and less in what I say, but still point people to God in everything I say.
Right.
But I don't want to use the word, because the minute you use certain words, they're trigger words, and you've lost them.
Yeah.
They're just gone.
Hmm.
And so it's sneaky.
Yeah. That'd be a good book.
So-
Helping us find language and
Yeah, I mean, and this is why the work I'm doing now at the university, where I'm just out and about with everybody who's doing something creative and interesting that does not speak my language.
right.
I'm trying to figure out what would a better language look like.
Right.
So that's sort of the ambition now.
I'd buy that book.
I need to write it. Yeah.
Same thing back. What album would you love to see Steve do next?
Oh, lordy.
A style or a theme or...
Okay, so style, first of all. I love it when it's just you and your guitar.
Mm.
I love it when it's just you and your guitar. And this, I don't know, this can get hokey.
Be hokey.
But I would love an album with you and your guitar bringing in the sounds of the world. Urban sounds, country sounds.
Yeah.
How do you talk? This is something I want to talk with you about, is what does conversation look like? Musical conversation that's different than verbal conversation. So I would love to see you do an album that brings in the sound of the world. And just you and your guitar, but the sound of the world. Okay, and that would be, because I've become interested in some friends of mine like David Haskell, who's fascinated with the sounds of the world, and he's written a really fine book about listening to the sound of the world. Right? And so the quote from Thoreau that I mentioned, you could do that beautifully.
That's a good idea.
Have the world sound through you.
Yeah.
You got a claw hammer already?
The claw hammer, yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be really special.
Why don't I let you guys dive further into the conversation?
Okay,
And I'll
great.
just back up that. I think that's a great place to start.
So I was totally taken by Steve's example from the symphony experience that he had. And I really want to sort of dig further into that, because for one thing, I think music allows us to rethink what it is to be a human being in a way that sort of visual metaphors that we've grown accustomed to don't allow. And you know this from Jeremy Begbie's talked about this a lot. And the reason I want to sort of explore with you about how that kind of encounter, that kind of engagement can happen, in this symphony hall that you're doing, but also how it might happen outside of a symphony hall. And what would that look like interpersonally? What would that look like in terms of our relationships with fellow creatures? Because when I listen to you say that, I wanted to say that's exactly what Sabbath rest is.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And this concept of resonance that I talk about in the whole book has become really important to me, because I think Sabbath is the realization of perfect resonance, which is why God could do what God does on that Sabbath day, because that Sabbath day is the place where the love of God meets the creation, which is purely love of God made manifest in all the material forms that we know. And that kind of encounter, I think, is what it's all for, right? Because the Jews have this amazing teaching about Sabbath, which says all our life ought to be a journey toward the Sabbath, and everything that we do ought to flow from the Sabbath. So it's not an interlude.
Right.
It's the pinnacle that ought to define everything that we do.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how you think about that experience in light of other kinds of modes of encounter that you've had. Do you sense that can happen outside of a symphony hall?
Yeah, I do. I'll give it just a couple examples.
Yeah.
They're all music related.
Right.
But it's about how when communities gather and how music sort of gives them an experience of communion.
Yeah.
I remember years ago when the charismatic renewal was just young, and I was in Winnipeg, and I was hearing about this thing called the charismatic renewal, and there was a conference in Minneapolis. You know, there's gonna be 20,000 people, and we go down there, and the place is on fire. You know, like people are singing hard and preaching hard, and the place is full. I mean, it was just ecstatic. I'd never experienced anything like it. And I came back from that just on a high, this is the highest, the pinnacle of my spiritual life. Unbelievable, you know. And then and just as I was starting to come down, I went to a Doobie Brothers concert in Winnipeg, same size arena. It was the exact same experience. It was the exact same. It was joyful. It was ecstatic. It was exuberant. I came away from that place higher than a kite. And then what it made me do, Doobie Brothers, Doobie. So if anybody doesn't know, just check out that word. That's an older word, but what it did first is it made me disappointed. Then the first one must not have been authentic. And then I started changing my mind. Maybe the first one is how I can say that the second one was authentic, right? That there wasn't an inauthentic experience there. That when you kind of come together and you have this, again, like you gather around, I mean, what songs do is they help us gather around a single melody or chord change. So we all, like, if you go to a concert, the worst concert was you'll all just hum your favorite song. Right? What makes it great is that we all submit to something common, and when that commonness is connecting to our common story. So whether you're a Christian or a Doobie Brothers fan, there's a common story there why we're here. That China Grove, when that song came out, this is where I was. Where were you when you first heard that song? Like all that
on
kind
a
of
pickup truck cab.
Yeah.
I was flying.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and that's what you do with music. Like, where did you hear it? Like, why did you, all that. The minute you start finding shared music experiences, you want to know why the other person connected. And what it does is, and so even in that, and the other thing is that first and then another time, I was in Chicago, and a friend of mine told me about this blues bar called Blues Etc. or something like that. And it was a downtown blues, and it was for like high end, kick-ass blues. It wasn't sort of the low, like, it was just on the band. I've never heard anything like it. And my buddy and I were in the back and could hardly see the band, and the music was just ecstatic. And the dancing, people were losing their minds. Like, it was just absolutely, and I got drawn to the front, and me and Gord are standing, who wrote the song Praise the Father, Praise the Son, we're standing by, and we'd never seen anything like this. Not this scene, we've never heard music like this. And I'm just pouring tears. And this was all like da da da, it was like really high energy music. And I looked over at Gord, and Gord's like ugly crying, and it's like, what is that? And then it suddenly occurred to me, like, I know who they're worshiping. I know what's going on here. This isn't some evil Dionysian, dive into sensuality. These people are experiencing who they are in the presence of God, and this is being just somebody needs to find the language. That's not going to turn them off. So, one more story.
Okay,
music related.
Okay,
my son Micah, at the time not a Christian. He's 18 years old. Lives in our house. Has drug issues. He's got serious money issues, like just irresponsibility, all that. I love the guy to death, but it's like, and he came to me because Aerosmith was coming to town. And he really wanted to see Aerosmith, but he had blown his money. He said, "Dad, can you lend me $80?" And so I did the dad, tough love. I just like hate it. Micah, here's two things. I have the money, and no. Right? You knew the concert was coming. You should have. I'm just, you're always doing this. That kind of a, thing. And so he understood. It wasn't a fight or anything. And so he goes to work that night, and he's depressed because all of his friends and his brother and his sister are going to the Aerosmith concert. And he actually has to walk by the arena to get to where he goes to work. And he's got this miserable job as doing phone
Call center?
Call center kind of things, surveys, right? Surveys. So he gets to the job and he's just depressed because everybody's at this great concert except for him, and he's a real rock guy. Like he knows Aerosmith better than I do. Like he knows Led Zeppelin better than I do. These kids, they just love that era. And so he gets to his work, and the survey that night was about all-terrain vehicles. Calling around the country, people, his best friend had just been killed in one 3 weeks earlier. And he takes a look at this thing, and he goes to his supervisor and says, I can't, it's just too soon. And the supervisor said, okay, I understand, go home tomorrow, it'll be a different survey. So this middle of winter, he leaves his office, and he's walking through the snow. This is February. He's walking through the snow, and it's blizzarding. And he has to go catch the bus in front of the arena where everybody's having this concert. And he sees $20 in the snow. And he picks it up, puts it in his pocket, walks another block, $20 in the snow. Picks it up and says, wow, it's got $40. And then now he's got a bit of money, and the concert hasn't started yet, and there's a restaurant bar at the base of the arena, and he knows his friends and brothers and sisters will likely be there, so I'll at least go and have a beer with them before they go in. He goes in, they have just left. He just missed them. Okay, so he leaves to go catch the bus, just missed the bus. So he's standing out there, just like everything's conspiring against him. His head is down, the blizzard is happening, all this. And he and he hears someone call out his name, Micah, and he looks up, and my friend Pete is there. And Pete's a rock and roll guy. He says, Pete, what are you doing here? He says, I wanted to get the concert, but I didn't get tickets. I was hoping I'd get some scalp tickets. And Micah says, how much are they? This is a minimum $100 for a seat at this point for what's left. And Micah says, I got 40. And Pete had $100 in his hand. He grabs Micah's 40, finds a scalper who's got 2 tickets, the last 2 tickets. The guy says 200, and Pete says, I got 140, and there's nobody behind me. Right? And so he gets a ticket. So, now, I'll try not to make this too long. We had just had a conversation. I had asked him if God had ever reached out to him and talked to him in his language. And he said no. He says, Dad, I know you have faith, but you've got all these stories, you've got all these experiences. God has never spoken to you in a way that, in your language? He goes, no, he had no experience of that. So we get this call at 11 o'clock, and where's Micah? He should have been home 2 hours ago, and it's like, it's terrible. Pete, come on, $40, and all this noise. I'm going, are you at the concert? It's like there was so much noise, and so I finally says, just come home when you can. He comes home, and I said to my wife, I think he's at the Aerosmith concert, and he comes in at about 1 o'clock. He is on fire. He tells me this whole story. And pardon my language, he says, Dad, it was a front row center ticket. Front row center ticket. Wow. And you've got all this collective ecstasy going on. He's out of his mind. He said, Dad, he said, Steve Tyler's got beautiful cobalt eyes. Cobalt? I was like, where does that come from? And then
the drugs, man.
Yeah. And then he says, pardon my French, he says, and at one point, he leaned down, grabbed me by the hand, and called me a dirty motherfucker. It was awesome! Now, like, go to bed. And so he turns around, he leaves the room, and then all of a sudden he comes back very pensive, and he says, is that what you're talking about? Did God just, talk to me about language?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I can't promise you that. That resonates with my experience. Yeah. I think so. And I think what happens when we have these experiences, collective experiences of joy and jubilation, whether it be a march or a public concert or a festival, so what we're not doing is telling people what that is. That joy doesn't reside in you. Like, you don't generate love and joy. That's overflow of the Trinity. Right? That's what you're experiencing. And we're teaching people, like young boys to go to church on Sunday because that's what God wants, and then you and I will go to the baseball game in the afternoon because that's what we want. It would never occur to us the reason why you love baseball is because God loves baseball. Right? And that is the thing. So language, in terms of collective experience, and it doesn't have to be music, and there's all kinds of collective experiences where you have that. You sense that greaterness, that transcendence. And that could be something like a shared garden day, where you just, at the end of the day, you worked hard and you're with your buddies and you're around the campfire and you did all that work and you have that, just that good feeling. right? We need to name that. You know, that's what we're talking about. That doesn't reside in you. That's just sheer gift right there. You know, that late night conversation with your best friends till 4 o'clock in the morning, and someone else says, "What did you talk about?" I don't know. Doesn't matter. It does not matter. But you have that. Well, let me tell you what that is. You know, and that's part of my response to
Yeah.
the. So I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking.
No, I mean that's great, because I think it's tapping into something that I find people are craving, which is real connection.
Yeah.
And you know, the first time I went to an Avett Brothers concert,
Yeah.
it was like, whoa, there's like major worship going on here.
Yeah.
And they're not worshiping them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, maybe.
But,
But
but there's a
there
yeah.
is the sense that you are drawn into something so big, and the reason you want to be drawn into it is because those brothers, they give it everything.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to burn 20,000 calories doing their concerts
Yeah.
because they're so committed to the songs
Yeah.
that they do. And I think people are looking for a connection with that kind of personal investment. And so I think about that, and I think about what's God's investment in the world upon that first creation. It is total.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then God comes into the presence, and
Yeah.
there is no other place God could possibly want to be.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to possibly want to do
Yeah.
except just be there and experience it and enjoy it
Yeah, for sure.
and find just the most wonderful affirmation of goodness and beauty
Yeah.
that there is. And you know, so as I think about how people desire this, how they crave this, and I think about my upbringing, you know, I'm listening to this music.
Yeah.
All the church elders said, do not listen to that music.
Right.
The minute you start tapping your foot, the music is
Yeah.
evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like killing that kind of
Yeah.
possibility as somehow dangerous,
Right.
and it'll lead you astray. And you know, and I started to think then more recently about, well, what are sort of resonance connection killers? And they're just everywhere in our society right now. Like this morning, the song about anxiety,
Yeah.
or who was saying something about it? The Psalm, or the
Matthew.
the Matthew. Do not worry, right? Don't be anxious about anything. If you're anxious, forget about that
Yeah.
kind of connection. It ain't gonna happen.
Huh.
If you're feeling desperate, if you're feeling abandoned and alone,
Yeah.
none of that can happen.
Huh.
And so for me then, the question is, how do you build structures, how do you build communities so that people can move into that kind of experience where it can happen?
Yeah.
You can't control it.
No.
You can't say, okay, I'm going to connect with you, and then you, if you say that to me, I'm running away.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean you want to connect with me? That's scary. It's going to just happen.
Yeah.
And you can't control it. So improvisation becomes a huge deal for me.
Yeah.
Because improvisation takes you into that space where, you know, it's not scripted.
Yeah.
Because people know when you come into a conversation that's scripted. And you want to see what happens.
Yeah.
And it just grows the more connection that's happening.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of giving of yourself
Yeah.
to others, to a
Okay.
community.
Okay, let's take it right out of the music thing.
Yep.
Because I think to some degree what we need to do, like we need to march, we need to vote differently, all that kind of stuff. But we need to create events where that possibility that happens, and
Yeah.
then name it. How did you guys all feel when you walked into the dining room last night and it wasn't just a bunch of stuff on the table, and it was spread out, and there was those dishes, and there was wine glasses, and there was all that kind of stuff, and you went, yeah, yeah, right away. It's like, oh, this isn't dinner, this is a feast. That's a very different thing. Nothing wrong with the dinners, nothing wrong with the lunches, they've been fantastic, but all of a sudden it's like, oh. And the movie Babette's Feast came up last night. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. But this gathering around food that creates different conversations than, okay, now you three go off and discuss the lecture, right? That's not a bad thing, you know, but a very different thing happens when you're like, that wine really connects with this, you know, or that salad really connects, and you're feeling that again, that overflow, you know. And so when we sing the doxology, like almost feel like we maybe we should sing at the end so we can name what just happened.
After the
Yeah. Okay. Let me tell you what you just experienced. That doesn't have to be a buzzkill. It's not a problem that God was in the room, you know. Actually, that's why it was such a great night. And that was mediated through this event that was intentional. Somebody thought that was a good idea and put the work in.
Yeah.
right? Somebody picked the tablecloth. Somebody decided how to lay out the food so it would work the best. At a certain point, somebody said, "You move here and you move there." That was genius. That was just. I had a whole other conversation that I was not expecting, and it was good.
Mine went
already.
downhill. I'm sorry. It's just,
But
I
again,
can say that because he left.
and at the end of the night, everybody's like, like it's just you got that glow, and the Gulf Stream may stop, and we might feel the effects of that pretty hard, but that happened last night. You can't deny that happened, right?
And for me, because there's a lot of bad stuff going on and will continue to go bad, we still have the opportunity, in fact, the calling to do that, even in the midst of all the garbage that's coming.
I think we have an obligation to do it.
And I think this is sort of the great work ahead, is to recover people to this very basic level of where we learn to connect with each other in ways that we can sense the beauty and the graciousness of each other and the worthiness, the love-worthiness of them, so that you want to invest in them, because it's when we invest in others that we affirm this world and we contribute to its healing and repair at the same time. And that's what we're going to have to do in the midst of contexts that in many ways will work in exactly the opposite direction. Right?
Yeah.
That's going to be absolutely key.
Yeah.
But I think it requires us to think differently about who we are. Because notice how the minute you start talking about this connection and the giving of yourself, you use the word ecstatic over and over again.
Yeah.
That's exactly who we are.
Erotic.
Exactly.
I'd like to hear you say more about that word, because I've got in my picture a very narrow lane for that word, and I know you just sort of suggest it, but there's something again erotic about that feast. How do you unpack that?
Keep talking. I'll see if I can find a little section that gets.
Well, you did say something yesterday, because I've actually been thinking about the word. The difference between like pornography and erotic; those are not the same things. We sort of connected that, or sort of a dirty mind about someone else's body, or something like that. But the idea, but even if you take the sexual metaphor, that you as I'm sorry, people, but as a male, literally penetrating someone with my love and my investment in them produces children. Do you know what I mean? And when that's received, when it's mutual, I'm not. But there's something about the sexual metaphor. I mean, and the ancients were not at all uncomfortable with it. They would almost talk about that as being the key metaphor for spirituality. The giving and the receiving of bodies. In love and enjoy, in enjoyment and in delight, that kind of eroticism, weirdly, produces new life, literally, and they shouldn't be disconnected. I'm not. This is not a. I'm not going off on who gets to marry who. But I'm just saying because there's different kinds of new life, but that those things are connected as well. And isn't that in the end what every really great conversation is? It's a sense a touchless sex.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, is it okay if I read just a little bit about talking about the erotic in a different register than music, this time in dance?
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think this expresses something of what I'm trying to get at with what eroticism is genuinely about. It's called Learning to Dance. Throughout this book, I've argued that hope is born when people come together and commit to the nurture of each other and their shared places. Hope lives in the diverse forms of love's braided dance covering the world. The braiding of lives and the joining of hands is the fundamental need of our existence. Hands reaching out, hands cradling another, hands clasping hands offering comfort and support, hands protecting and building, hands nudging and releasing, hands cheering another on. Gestures like these demonstrate our shared vulnerability and self-insufficiency, but also our fidelity to and our desire to live for each other. When we intentionally join together, we communicate, however inchoately, our conviction that the future is worth working toward together. Hope is the power that propels people to give themselves to the care and celebration of life with fellow creatures.
Say it again, that line.
Hope is the power that propels people to give themselves to the care and celebration of life with fellow creatures. By contrast, isolation, abandonment, and abuse diminish life's possibilities and erode the bases for hope. I have also assumed that it is false to speak of an individual or isolated life. People cannot stand alone, nor can they live well entirely by themselves. Life is movement with and circulation through others. Soil, fresh water, photosynthetic and digestive processes, reproductive and daily health, caring communities, traditions of language and meaning, built environments and economies, all of these elements are constitutive of our being and identity, pulsing through our bodies at every moment. Even in death, the motion never stops, as microbes and processes of decomposition break down and repurpose the body for yet more life. Living never simply means us acting upon places and fellow creatures. It also and always means others acting upon us in life and in death. Eating, drinking, touching, being touched, breathing, and being inspired are the daily demonstrations of this fact. To live is to be engaged, always in relation to others. To engage thoughtfully, we need to consider how and what to give in response to what is always already received. So then, how should we move within life's receiving, responding dynamic? What should the goals of our intertwining movement be? Are some forms of embodied engagement more beautiful or more hopeful than others? And is there anything like a false move? Dance can be defined as the artistry of bodily movement, or as dancers sometimes say, as the poetry of the body. In this art form, people express through their bodies what they are feeling and how they are feeling it. The American dancer and choreographer Martha Graham put it beautifully when she said, "Dance expresses the state of the soul's weather." Of course, we do not need to be professional dancers on a stage to communicate through our bodies, often more honestly than with our words, our varying states of fear, freedom, anxiety, possibility, power, boredom, anger, compassion, empathy, sadness, and joy. Athletes, construction workers, parents, musicians, cooks, nurses, farmers, technicians, to name a few, can exhibit artistry of movement too. Right? You volunteer staff. Artistry of movement. Even so, dance brings into clarifying view what human bodies are capable of and what they might aspire to achieve. As Graham has noted, I think the reason dance has held such an ageless magic for the world is that it has been the symbol of the performance of living. I feel that the essence of dance is the expression of mankind, the landscape of the human soul. It is the eternal pulse of life, the utter desire, right? This erotic movement. By attending to dance, then, we have an opportunity to focus on the skills people need to navigate through this world and with each other with dignity and grace. Skills like attention and listening, courage and creativity, exertion and discipline, mercy and grace. Dance matters and is instructive because, among multiple possibilities, it can give embodied expression to what a healed, beautiful, and harmonious relationship with the world and with others might look like. A dancer often starts with a clean and open stage floor, much the way a painter starts with a blank canvas or a writer with a clean sheet of paper or a blank computer screen. The possibilities are endless. Our lived worlds, by contrast, are populated by structures and fellow creatures that both limit and inspire us. As we move, we regularly encounter slopes, detours indoors, sunshine, rain and ice, butterflies, mosquitoes and wasps, fatigue, aches and injuries, friends, strangers, enemies. Though modern technologies often hold out the promise of a friction-free world, the reality is that most of us experience surprise, encouragement, resistance, anger, frustration, disappointment, and joy precisely because of the variety of encounters we have every day. So the question, how should we move in a beautiful but wounded and wounding world? There isn't an easy or straightforward answer. The desire to express yourself and join with others should not be taken for granted. Far too many people find themselves in abusive contexts or in situations where they are neglected, anxious, or exhausted. If people feel afraid or sad, chances are that they will find it difficult to move, let alone give creative expression to their deepest desires. The idea that life is a dance will seem far-fetched, if not preposterous. A safer option is to minimize engagements with others and, as much as possible, stay within the walls you have built to protect yourself. It takes considerable self-assurance and courage, and the knowledge that you have the mercy and support of others in times of trouble, to move confidently into the risky places of engagement and self-expression. The patterns of daily life have also changed significantly within modernity, as people have been taught to think of themselves more as individual, autonomous, rational, self-interested choosers or shoppers, and less as members of community, depending on, contributing to, and responsible for the communities of which they are a part. People increasingly find less reason to collaborate with others as it becomes easier to shop, eat, play, work, think, entertain, build, and worship alone. As Richard Sennett has persuasively argued, modern society is de-skilling people in practicing cooperation. Of course, people still come together, sometimes in great numbers. The question is whether their coming together creates the inspiration, solicitude, nurture, and commitment, and joy that animates love's braided dance. The art of improvisation can be of considerable help to us if our aim is to participate in the dance and try to negotiate what is often a bruising and unpredictable world. The merit of this art is that it does not require a neat and tidy space in which to perform a pre-planned, fully choreographed set of movements. Improvisation does not mean do whatever you want. Rather, what improvisation requires is that you be fully attentive to yourself and your place, determine what is possible and pleasing at that moment, and respond in ways that are honest and true to what you encounter. Improvisation is a form of conversation in which participants are constantly listening to each other so that whatever speech they offer does not misrepresent, disrespect, or obliterate what they have heard. This symphony experience, this is exactly what I'm trying to say poorly.
Right.
In other words, to improvise well takes discipline. An invitation to improvise is rather intimidating. What if what I have to offer is inelegant, hurtful, refused, or embarrassing? You were not going to get me to sing last night. Right? Talk about inelegant. It is often easier to settle for the formulaic or the prescribed than to personalize a response. We all want to be loved, says Noir Al-Sadir in this beautiful book called Animal Joy. The problem is that you're less likely to connect with others on an emotional level if you're leading with a prototype or idea, an ego communication, rather than a spontaneous impulse. When your goal is to get a certain response, which involves projecting yourself into the position of another to anticipate and meet their imagined expectations, if that's not social media, I don't know what it is, as opposed to staying close to the source, deep in you, you're bound to flop. Alster does not deny that people can connect at the level of words and ideas, but if your aim is a deeper and more personal connection, then it is crucial that you communicate your conviction and commitment. She says, if a performer's expressions feel honest, of the moment, rather than rehearsed, the audience senses an authentic conversation. They connect. If not, there's silence. In other words, people want to know that in their encounters with you, they are not meeting a shell or a fake. Performing love's braided dance in a fake and impersonal world is difficult because authentic engagement is erotic and passionate. To improvise well, people must believe they matter and have something valuable to give. They must feel they belong, and they must know they will be forgiven when they fail or make mistakes. They need to feel the power of life moving through and around them, and then they must want to give creative expression to that power in the things that they do. It is hard for any of this to happen apart from a community that affirms life's loveliness by nurturing, encouraging, challenging, correcting, and celebrating each other. The flip side of performing passionately is believing that others matter just as much as you do, that they should be affirmed, welcomed, forgiven, and embraced, perhaps especially in contexts of injury and wrongdoing. Why, after all, would you make the effort to listen attentively to, wait patiently for, and move gently with others unless you recognize their goodness and beauty? what I would characterize as their sacred worth and their never again to be repeated gracious presence. Curiosity, respect, mercy, and compassion are at the heart of a hopeful improvisational effort. So too are anger and lament as expressions of protest in the presence of another's abuse or abandonment. Graham believed that dancers have little to express if they do not cultivate themselves. The unique, irreplaceable life that you are cannot be discovered and developed. The unique, irreplaceable life that you are can be discovered and developed only if you exercise the curiosity and contemplation that takes you into the mystery and miracle of your own existence and into the memories of what you have suffered and learned. Dancers must be true to themselves and to their environments if they are to be reborn to the instant. That's what Graham describes it. It's beautiful. Reborn to the instant. None of this can happen without reverence for small, beautiful things, gratitude for delicate strength, and a good measure of grace. The grace resulting from faith, faith in love, faith in people, in the act of dancing. Peter Van Yperen is a friend of mine, a dancer and choreographer based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, says trust is at the heart of improvisational movement. First, you must trust your own body to perform a movement, and to do that you must practice again and again. Insofar as dancers feel unstable or fear that the ground beneath will not support them, their bodies will shrink and turn in. They will not be able to extend outward because they do not believe the body's center will support their effort. Second, you must trust your partner to welcome and enhance your movement. There's always the risk that either partner will make a mistake or take a misstep, which is why mutual surrender must always be accompanied by mutual mercy and forgiveness. This too takes considerable practice, as each dancer learns from the other the shape and timing of their bodily movements. The key is not to contaminate or undermine another's movement by trying to control it. Insofar as a dancer is committed to imposing on the partner, the possibility of creating a new thing together evaporates. And this is so hard, people. I've been married for, 34 years, 35. Still trying to figure out how to dance. Dancers that move beautifully together have learned to listen to what each other says, both verbally and through their body language. But there is a deeper language, what Van Yperen calls heart language, that needs to be listened to as well. This level of communication takes us to the core of a person's being, what we might describe as the center of a person's desires, fears, and convictions. None of us have perfect clarity about ourselves or others. It takes time and patience to figure out what is going on inside so we can better express a vision for life on the outside. But as we dig deeper and exercise compassion, joy manifests itself in the form of a body that moves from places of strength. A joyful body is an integrated body, a body that is attuned to its environment, a body that feels life pulsing throughout its members, reaching out to be in resonant relationship with others. That's eroticism. When Graham taught her dance classes, the metric by which she judged a performance was not technical perfection. Dancers can have phenomenal technique and still lack the passion and meaning that make their movements resonate. She said, "I don't demand at the beginning any vestige of perfection. What I long for is the eagerness to meet life, the curiosity, the wonder that you feel when you really move. You have to permit yourself to feel. You have to permit yourself to be vulnerable. You may not like what you see. That is not important. You don't always have to judge." The most important thing, Graham believed, is to cultivate in dancers the excitement of living. Or as Van Yperen says, the crucial thing is to enter your space and see it as a place of possibility and new creation, a place that because of your movement reveals potential that has not been realized before. When that happens, a future emerges that is worthy of your best efforts. Pain and frustration will make their appearances in this future, but so too will beauty and love. The hope that emerges and grows in love's braided dance is our most worthy hope, but it is a hope that is, without perfection, a hope born of excitement for life's goodness and beauty, a hope tied to the nurture, protection, and celebration of each other, a hope committed to mercy and forgiveness, a hope manifest in the construction of built environments and just economies that honor the lives that move within and through them, a hope witnessed in the creative gestures that resonate within the world's symphony of life. That's what I think eroticism is.
I was going to say, what was the question? Wow. Wow. Huh.
Is that from your new book?
Yeah, that's the epilogue.
That's the epilogue. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, because I grew up doing farm work, doing construction work, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
When you're doing good work, and it requires skill, and I've been very interested in creativity. There've been lots of people studying the phenomena of creativity, and what they say is that in creativity, you're not worried about doing it perfect. You're just into the moment where you're sensing that your skill is now meeting up with the world, and you're able to have a real conversation with whatever medium it is. And so when I build furniture, for instance, which I love to do, I just get overwhelmed by the beauty of the wood and its feel, and how a cut can make something fit together so beautifully. And then, my wife laughs at me, but I made a kitchen table and chairs out of wormy maple, which is just this amazing wood, and it's also called ambrosia maple. It goes by different names. Every day, I fondle my table. And my wife says, "You're kind of sick, Norm." But it's true. I mean, I absolutely love this wood.
Yeah.
And I feel the goodness of God in it every day.
Yeah.
And what makes it, it's not just that I built it, which is lovely, right? And I wish more people had the experience. Like Mako, who some of you know, Mako Fujimura, he says the church has been severely damaged because it doesn't encourage members in making things.
Mm-hmm.
Because she says when you engage in making, God shows up every time.
Mm.
But when you're reduced to being a spectator or a shopper in life, where's God going to show up? Because what shows up in the shopping experience is some marketer's vision for what the world should be. Not always, but often. And what we want when we engage the world is to sense the investment of God and the investment of others in that world, celebrating its goodness and beauty. And we get to join in that work when we make things. But we have to want to give ourselves to the world and be surprised by the world. Because many times when I try to make things, I fail. And then I realize it's not because the medium was no good, it's because I wasn't ready to work with it properly. And so the kind of engagement that makes real connection possible, it takes knowledge, it takes patience, it takes so much listening. And those are the kinds of skills that are hard to come by in a world where we're just moving so fast, which is why I keep coming back to Sabbath and all of my thinking. If we can't figure out Sabbath, we're screwed.
I want to pick up on that making thing. Like my son and his wife and two youngest grandkids were over for the last 10 days just before coming here, and my wife is a maker of pies and bread and salads, all those things, and she can't not invite our grandkids into it, and it just makes it twice as long, and a little bit more messy, but she actually lets them break the eggs. We'll pick out the eggshells. Not a big deal if you don't get it right, and I'm just kind of looking at it. I would just kind of go, this could be done in half the time. I'll go take them to the back and play with them, trying to be helpful. It's like, you get away from here. It's like, but in my own experience, which is interesting, because I'm just pick up on this making thing, because making things together also is different than making things. So I've got my favorite guitar that I own isn't one that's necessarily the best one, but I worked with a luthier on it, a guitar maker, and so then I had to go in and we had to pick woods, and I don't know how to pick woods. And so he has all these. He's got these flat tops, just ready to go to be carved up for the thing. Different woods, different grain sizes, and he gives me this little bit of a lesson about what different grains, what different things, what the difference will be in the guitar, you know. And then he said, so we kind of have to imagine. He says, but he picks up this one flat piece of wood, and it's a piece of wood like this that's been joined, and he picks it up and he taps it. He's holding it as light as he can. He taps it, and you hear that note. You know, and then he picks up a back from a different piece of wood that could be a back, and it's a different note. And you're looking for resonance. You're looking for resounding. You know, that this one, if I hold this one up and we tap at the same time, they actually start almost talking to each other or sharing in each other's sound, resounding. You know, now, in the end, is it a better guitar? Not understand why it's a better guitar is that we made it. We made those choices together, you know. And then he called me in. Here's the time to come in. We need to make a choice. Like, how do you want to decorate this thing? Do you want, you know, all this kind of stuff and you make these things, and it's very personal. And so I love that guitar. It is a good guitar. I'm not saying it isn't a good guitar, but I could have just kind of got the same guitar by saying, just call me when it's done. He doesn't make bad guitars, and I've got guitars that other people made with me not in the room. They're not the same.
So this thing,
but let me finish. We've made something here this weekend.
I was going to get to that.
Yeah, like this. Here's the thing. Like, you think about all the preparation of even this space before any of us have even thought about coming here. You, in your vision, have been creating this possibility for a long time. Not only the land and the home and how it works, but the relationships that you've been cultivating. And all of us have been cultivating all sorts of things that bring us here. And then we come here, and you and I are the rock stars, the event, but clearly that's not true. You know, one of my
You're
favorite,
the rock star.
Yeah, it's me. Yeah.
Let's be clear about things.
My biggest moment was walking in and seeing the table last night. I walked in and like I don't know why. I wasn't expecting it, and something in my heart leapt.
So in agrarian spirit, I call this material intelligence.
Call it what?
Material intelligence.
Okay.
And that's the intelligence that grows from working with real things. And the volunteer people here, you've been doing that.
Yeah.
And you've been using your hands and your knowledge and your affections to create a space where we can feel like, this is wonderful. And the thing is, that material intelligence has to be cultivated. I mean, think, who was the person who knew that by working with apple trees and then working with cereal grains to make a flour, who thought about that? To make a pie crust. Put some butter in there, and you put these two things together, apple and pie crust, and you bake it. And then somebody went and sucked on a cow's teat and made milk come out, and then they made ice cream. Who thought about that? I mean, all of those were examples of material intelligence. And you get to have apple pie a la mode. That is freaking amazing, right? And the whole world exists in that sort of a way. And you did that. I mean, leek butter. I've never had leek butter.
Wild leek butter.
Wild leek butter. I mean, somebody had to know enough about the world to say, we can combine this. And so this is a chance for us to join our creativity and love with the creativity and love that's always in the world already. And sure, you shouldn't try to eat everything in the world because some stuff will kill you. But that, again, is a skilled engagement with the world. And I worry that we don't think that that's important to do because we're always heavenly bound in our spirituality. Or we're thinking, just endure this veil of tears, and then when you're dead, then it gets good. And in the meantime, what we've done is we've let all these beauties and graces just go overlooked because we haven't taken the time to engage them, to come into their presence, to listen, to learn, and to do this improvisational dance with the world where we see what's possible here. Because I still believe there's so much goodness that we have not yet figured out even. And it's just been sitting there. And a lot of it is stuff that's been found by people who've then been submerged, right? Like learning from indigenous cultures about just the world around us and what this world could do for us if we cooperated with it rather than stampeded it and tried to control it and commodify it and so forth.
If I could just quickly return to kind of where we started from. When we think about this event and all that's conspired to make this all happen. we were here, right? Like, whatever else is going on, we were here. We can't deny that this weekend happened. And here's what's going to be amazing about it, is that 10 years from now, somebody from here is going to see me in an airport, and I'm not going to recognize you. And when you walk up to me, there'll be no feeling whatsoever. And I'll be looking at you, walking up to me, and you're going to say something, and you're going to say, I was at, you know, I think, and what's going to immediately come out, flood out, is going to be affection. The minute I recognize that, oh, we have this common experience, I guarantee you that what the next feeling, and it's going to come like a flood, is affection. You were there, was there, you know, and then the chances are the more you talk, and go, oh yeah, you know, and all that, and all of a sudden, this is not for nothing, like, you know, and I think it's N.T. Wright who said that everything done with love, nothing done with love will ever perish. Like this all becomes furniture for the kingdom come.
Mm-hmm.
This all becomes adornation, decoration, furniture, you know, that kind of thing. That nothing is lost.
Yeah.
And so this weekend we've actually literally created something permanent.
Yeah.
Like eternally permanent in the last few days. And so when I think about it, and I came here, I need to answer for me what hope means, because I'm struggling with it. But when I think that, I think none of this is, whatever happens tomorrow, this cannot go away. This is always there.
So a poet that I quite like is Thomas Traherne.
Yeah.
His Centuries of Meditations. And in his poetry, he says over and over again that the world is, it's the exhibition of beauty and loveliness. And he says beauty is everywhere, but we don't see it. Why? Because we're too busy with our own ambition. Or we're too wrapped up in our own fear. He wasn't attuned to that as much, but certainly the ambition side of things. And I think maybe one of the most important things that we can do for each other in this time, be lovers in a dangerous time, is help us each appreciate, sense the love-worthiness of the people we're with, and the love-worthiness of our communities, right? The love-worthiness of this world. And if we can do that in the midst of these dangerous times, there will be these sort of exhibitions that say, hey, this is worth it. The worst thing is to be so overwhelmed, and I sense this because I get it, is to be so overwhelmed with all the garbage. It's just so awful. You want to just cuss nonstop. It's so bad. And I'm living in America, people. It's just, it is beyond depressing. And so the key is to not let that, totally overwhelm your ability to see the beauty still all around you. And it's in here, each one of you. And it's so hard to remember that because so many of us have been beaten down, either been bullied or been whatever, or just passed by. The number of people that just feel abandoned and alone, it's so hard. This is why you need community support around you. And I tell students at the DIS school, as a pastor, one of the most important things you can do is to create a community of people who actually attend to each other, who care for each other, who celebrate each other.
In your book, Agrarian Spirit, you talk about 5 virtues of the agrarian spirit, and the first one is prayer. And then you have a quote of Simone Weil, who basically, I've written down, but attention is prayer.
Right.
Could you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah. I love Simone Weil. She's very hard, but she's so brilliant. And she spent a lot of time talking about attention and how difficult that is because we tend to see the world through our own desires for that world. And so we don't really come into the presence of another. Right? We come into the presence of what we want the other to be. Right? And this is not just something that we do interpersonally, we do that with the world around us. And so she says we need to cultivate this practice of de-selfing.
Or de-selfing.
Yeah, there's different ways that she goes about it. Because when you can do that and you become transparent to the world right? What you're doing is you're basically becoming transparent to the presence of God in the world.
Okay, because I was going to ask, as an evangelical boy, how is attending prayer?
Yeah, I mean, what people in my orbit would have said, well, if you pay too much attention to things, that's idolatry, right?
Right.
And it's the exact opposite. Idolatry is our movement to others so as to be able to appropriate them for our own ambitions, our own wants. That's idolatry.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what genius for.
Yeah, I mean, think about the famous story with the Ten Commandments. Moses comes down, they built the golden calf. And we think, well, the idol was worshiping the golden calf. No. The calf represented something. It wasn't the calf itself that they worshipped. They weren't that stupid.
Right.
What they were worshiping was their own fear, ambition, and anxiety. Because remember, Moses is up at the mountain, and they say, we need another God. And what's the source of this desire for another God? They are so freaking worried.
Outcome control.
They're worried they're going to perish.
Yeah.
And so they bring all their wealth, right? What is this wealth? Well, the wealth is their future.
Right.
A future that is totally saturated with their fear. And they put it in, and then what happens? No one sculpts the calf. And it says, and the calf just came out.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, so the calf is just, it is the exhibition, the material expression of their anxiety. It's completely the opposite of the world as the expression of God's love.
Right.
That's the idolatrous move, is to place yourself at the heart of the world. Your fears, your anxieties, your ambition, your arrogance, whatever. That's idolatrous. It's not things. Things have never been an obstacle to God. It's how we approach things that has been the obstacle to God. And so we've been totally confused about what idolatry is. Right? Because it is even, in my world, it taught me, don't pay too much attention to that guitar. And I'm thinking, no, pay attention to the guitar. Because if you do, you'll make a good one. Or a beautiful one, instead of a cruddy one.
Yeah.
And then we'll all be glad, because it's a good one now. And it's the same with our housing. Don't think housing is insignificant. It's hugely important. But to do that, you have to actually think things matter, because that's how the love of God is going to be realized, right? Or manifested, or magnified even.
Yeah.
Right? And so what I think of a feast, God is so happy when people feast, because God can say, look, I gave you wheat, I gave you cows, and I gave you apples, and you did this. Good for you. Do it again with cherries, with raspberries, whatever, right?
And you can eat dandelion.
And you can, and God is just saying, yay, you finally figured it out.
Yeah.
None of this is evil.
Mm.
But I grew up in a world where, there's bad stuff. You've got to get away from all that.
Mm.
And so agrarian spirit is all about saying, get rid of that spirituality of up and away. Make it a spirituality down and among.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where God is.
Mm. So that's the discipline of descent,
Yeah.
rather than ascent.
Yeah. And it's also why I talk about generosity and not just gratitude.
Yeah, I love that. So in his book, it talks about generosity is the act of gratitude, not just the feeling or the emotion.
I get
It's
really
the
tired
act.
when people say, just be grateful. No. Gratitude hasn't really taken hold unless you're generous. You can be just as greedy as can be and still be grateful for it all.
Yeah.
It's not until you're ready to give it away that you really are grateful.
Yeah, it's not the attitude of gratitude, it's the act of gratitude, which is generosity, right?
Yeah.
Steve, do you have a song that you can take that into?
Yeah.
We want to do the Bruce song too.
Yeah. Why don't we do that?
Which one do you want to do?
I was going to do kindness, but...
Do that one, and I'll get ready.
Okay.
Do kindness. We're going to do 2 songs. Bruce has been in this building much today, so we want to actually involve.
Yeah, you can hear Bruce. Yeah. Okay, I won't say a lot, but I'll just do it.
Just do it. Do it.
Okay.
Right there.
Okay, this is what I'm quickly doing. This is the text comes from a Teresa of Avila, 15th century, I think, or 14th.
I love this song, Peter. It's a really good one.
Sorry, I can't help it. So, right when I was recording this song is called Kindness. The text comes from Teresa Avila. The music is Brian McLaren. Nobody knows that he's a songwriter. He's actually a very good songwriter. But I was recording this album and this song, and that night I was lying in bed, and you know when you're half asleep, half awake, and so I was in that state. And in the top of my mental screen, the word kindness came up, and it was in red. I don't know if that means anything. If there's any
It
analysts
means
here.
that you're a high visualizer.
Oh, okay. And so red. So and it went across the screen like a weather warning. Like, you know, so like kindness. I'm just looking at it as if that's not weird. And then when it got to this side, it went sync and it started again. Cross, and I'm just going, oh, kindness. You know. And then it came a third time, and the first three letters separated from the last four, and I saw kindness. And it suddenly occurred to me that kindness is not like niceness. It's a much more robust word, because kindness is what comes out of a sustained or internalized sense of kinship, right? And so the reason why I would like to help my friend that some of you are helping me with financially isn't because I'm nice, but I've sensed her kinship, and I can't not, right? That's a different thing. So. Christ has no body here but ours, no hands, no feet here on earth but ours. Ours the eyes through which he looks on this world with kindness. Ours are the hands through which he works. Ours are the feet on which he moves. Ours the voices through which he speaks to this world with kindness. Through our touch, our smile, our listening ear, embodied in us, Jesus is living here. Let us go now, inspirited, into this world with kindness. Through our touch, our smile, our listening ear, embodied in us, Jesus is living here. Let us go now, inspirited, into this world with kindness.
So good.
That's a good song.
It's
Yeah.
a good song.
Okay, let me read the lyrics of this one. I just thought you should hear it twice. So you've been hearing from us older people about Bruce Coburn. So Bruce is 78, and this is from his latest album that came out last year. It's called When the Spirit Walks in the Room. Manhattan or Dakar makes no difference where you are. It doesn't matter what you think, if you smoke or if you drink. You're a thread upon the loom when the Spirit walks in the room. That's good.
That's the most amazing line.
I'm done, you know. Okay, you could be naked, you could be armed, you could be charming, you could be charmed. You could be open, you could be closed. Be one of us or one of those. You're a thread on the loom when the Spirit walks in the room. So good. On the march or on the run, it matters not what you've done, nor what you'll do, nor what you'll say. We play the role we're made to play, but we're threads upon the loom when the Spirit walks in the room. It can appear at any hour. When it comes in power. You may not walk, you may not see, but you'll become what you can be. You're a thread on the loom when the Spirit walks in the room. We're just threads on the loom when the Spirit walks in the room.
Manhattan or Dakar, it makes no difference where you are. It doesn't matter what you think or if you smoke or if you drink. You're a thread upon the loom when the Spirit walks in the room. You could be naked, you could be armed, you could be charming, you could be charmed, you could be open, you could be closed, be one of us or one of those. You're a thread upon the loom when the Spirit walks in the room. On the march or on the run, it matters not what you have done, nor what you'll do, nor what you'll say. We play the role we're made to play. We're but threads upon the loom when the Spirit walks in the room. It can appear at any hour. When it comes in power. You may not walk, you may not see, but you'll become what you can be. You're a thread upon the loom when the Spirit walks in the room. We're but threads upon the loom when the Spirit walks in the room.
Okay, honestly, like I've been having talks with some friends about, when do you start to think about retiring, that kind of stuff. And I heard that album just came out, and I thought, fuck, I can't retire. Because that song might be there yet. Like, what if that song's at your 79th year, and so I can't quit because, gee,
That's amazing.
just what if there's another song like that, Okay.
All right, coffee time.